What's up, intuitive healers? Let's get into this Virgo New Moon Solar Eclipse that we're having on September 21st. We've got a heavy-hitting eclipse chart here at 29 degrees Virgo, which is already loaded because this is the fated degree in astrology, symbolizing a crisis point or culmination. It's basically the very last call. This degree is associated with Zodiac sign Leo, merging that with Virgo themes of discernment, order, health, systems, purification, and service. Eclipses in astrology are generally about purging. It's about something ending. It's about a closure that is being forced if we're resisting. This 29-degree Virgo is putting more pressure on the need for closure by turning the volume up. It's important to note that what makes this a solar eclipse is that we're having Virgo at the sun at the 29th degree, as well as Virgo at the moon at the 29th degree. So this doubles down by forcing closure, forcing transition, and forcing elevation. Let's get into the placements for that day. After that, we'll talk about some of the moon aspects and other relevant interactions, and then we'll finish off with our horoscope. We're having the sun in Virgo, moon in Virgo, Mercury in Libra, Venus in Virgo, Mars in Libra, Jupiter in Cancer, Saturn in Pisces, Uranus in Gemini, Neptune in Aries, Pluto in Aquarius, collective North Node is still in Pisces, our Lilith is in Scorpio, collective Chiron is in Aries, and our fortune is currently in Taurus with vertex in Libra. Please keep in mind that we currently still have Saturn in Pisces retrograde, Uranus in Gemini retrograde, Neptune in Aries retrograde, Pluto in Aquarius retrograde, North Node in Pisces retrograde, as well as Chiron in Aries retrograde. What all of this speaks to is that we are coming to terms with a lot of past issues that we have been ignoring for quite some time. So the solar eclipse at the last degree, which is a degree again of Leo, is a crisis. It's a crisis of consciousness. It's bringing us back to areas of our past where we use overthinking and self-criticism and controlling behaviors as a way to avoid really taking responsibility. And these toxic patterns have kept us in this endless loop of trying to control situations that we can't control, rendering us unhappy, with us asking ourselves, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with this situation? How can I fix it? So this eclipse is wiping the slate clean, essentially. It's clearing out your karma so that the emotional undertone of some of those decisions, we can sort of address head on. Because underneath this need to control and to overthink is this belief that we can think our way out of everything. And we can't. Okay? When you don't know how to trust life and you fully lean on your intellect for everything, you're going to live in a state of anxiety. Because some things in life are simply not going to make logical sense. So this solar eclipse is essentially liberating you, bringing you good Virgo energy by teaching your mind how to let go of this obsessive need for order, for reassurance. The interaction between Saturn and Neptune opposing Pisces here is really dissolving like this tension, this uncertainty. It's kind of like the rug is being pulled from underneath you, with your mind having to sort of confront its own obsession and its own like thirst for analysis. And it overwhelms the mind, which then forces the body to tap into the emotions. And that's essentially what the moon placement is about. It's about our emotions. So let's get into the moon aspects. We have Saturn in opposition to this moon. So there's some heavy judgment coming our way in terms of old guilt, old shame, feeling inadequate, mistakes that we've made from the past, all are coming back up. Saturn, as you know, is the disciplinarian of the zodiac. Saturn represents the inner critic. So there is an aspect here suggesting that there is a pattern with something we've been wrestling with in the past, because remember, Saturn is old energy. So now we're being asked to let go, to dissolve, to separate, to release. The moon is also opposing Neptune. Neptune is the planet of illusion, of dreams, of deception. You know, Neptune brings an emotional fog. Neptune brings idealism. Neptune brings fantasy. So Neptune being in opposition to this moon may make us feel a bit overwhelmed, a bit confused, a bit dizzy, tempted to escape all the discomfort, the emotional discomfort that we're feeling from all of the guilt and the judgment from poor decisions that we've made in the past. We might want to run away to substances. We might want to run away to Fantasyland or television, overeating, anything to basically avoid feeling our feelings. And that's really what this tension is about, because Saturn is harsh. Saturn wants clarity. Saturn wants limits. Saturn wants rules. And Pisces is the opposite of that. Pisces wants no boundaries. And we're being confronted with this tension, and our psyche is trying to reconcile the two, between wanting to run away to a world of illusion and dreams and fantasy and having to deal with the harsh, cold reality of the consequences of our actions. Another interaction happening here with the moon is Uranus and Pluto being trine. That is actually a positive aspect, because this aspect is bringing in emotional release. It's bringing in emotional catharsis. So these old complexes, these old issues that we've talked about, these old insecurities, we're finally seeing them from a new perspective, which is allowing us more insight, more freedom. You know, the ego is collapsing, recognizing that we didn't handle it properly, recognizing that we weren't our best selves when we made some of these decisions. And we're seeing our ability to transform our point of view, our ability to transform our habit, our behavior. You know, Pluto is always going to dig up what's buried. You know, Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. This is why Scorpio sees beyond the veil, because Pluto goes to the depths of hell. Pluto goes as deep as it goes. Remember, Pluto rules life and death. You know, Pluto knows where all the bones are buried, okay? So Pluto is always going to dig up what is buried. And Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, is always going to break the lock, because Uranus is in the future. So whatever we think is in the past is actually in the future when it's unresolved. So the beauty of this trine interaction between these two weird planets, and I love them when they come together so nicely, is that they bring us truth. And in that truth, there's liberation, there's expansion, there's freedom, you know? And sometimes the price for freedom is bitterness. And I don't mean like you're a bitter spirit. I mean, it's bitter truths. It's having to sit with the uncomfortable truth that you've been running away from. What happens when you turn around and you start to face it, it no longer has power over you. Another aspect happening that's interesting is a conjunctive vertex. So while our emotions may be stirred during this time, you know, there is an opportunity here for fate to come into alignment. You know, somebody might be coming into our lives to teach us about ourselves by either mirroring our unhealed side, which is our shadows, or circumstances are going to come up that are going to force us to confront, you know, emotions that we've buried. So emotionally, this is really a process of peeling away at illusions, at dreams, or fantasies, or lies that we tell ourselves, and breaking down defenses and facing these ugly feelings we're running away from, like shame, you know, disappointment, inadequacies, you know, not feeling productive, not feeling competent. You know, all of these are deep-rooted emotions that a lot of people have, you know, a lot of discomfort with. And unfortunately, this transit is forcing honesty. Because another thing that's happening with this transit is that Mercury is currently in Libra, and Libra needs balance. Libra needs fairness. Libra needs equality. So Venus, in all of her infinite beauty, is demanding that we bring balance to these situations that are making us feel unstable. Because Libra cannot sustain in an environment that is not fair and that is not balanced. So we have to do what we need to do from an honesty standpoint, from an honorable standpoint, to reconcile the fantasy that we created, the lie that we created that, you know, brought imbalance into our world with the reality that we're now facing. And Venus currently being in Virgo is also demanding that we bring good intentions to our lives. Okay, so Venus in Virgo is idealistic in nature. very much so into perfectionism in love. You know, oftentimes Venus in Virgo, when unhealed, has issues with attachment. It's either they want to be left alone 1 second, 1 minute, and the next minute they want to be codependent. So Venus in Virgo, if you have your Venus in this placement, if you've been codependent and it's been too much, expect to have a push towards being yourself, being more independent. If you've been avoidant, expect to have a push towards confronting things and facing things. So relationships right now are going to mirror areas of our lives where we need to grow. Okay, this is a growth transit. We're going to feel pulled to work through dynamics that we've avoided, feelings that we've avoided, issues that we've avoided. There's no way around it. It's either we're going to come nicely or we're going to get dragged, because having Virgo both at the sun and at the moon, you know, is asking for performance. And I don't mean performance in the sense that Leo wants to put on a good show. I mean work. It's asking for work, because Virgo rules work. Virgo rules health and wellness and work. So we're not going to be able to tap dance our way out of the discomfort. We're going to have to work for it. And that doesn't mean being so hypercritical that we can't enjoy life, but it does mean taking responsibility for creating the softness that we need in our lives so we can bring that sense of perfection in the midst of our imperfection instead of projecting it outward, okay? Mars is also currently in Libra. As you know, Mars rules over conflicts. Now let's talk about the interactions with Mars. Mars is currently in Libra. As you know, Mars is a planet of war in astrology. It also rules over conflict and projection, specifically in relationships. When Mars is on a descendant, anger gets projected onto others, you know. So during this time, you may experience, you know, conflict within your partnership. And if you're working this energy in the shadow, instead of directly communicating your needs, you may resort to being argumentative, being passive aggressive, you know, basically projecting onto them things about ourselves that we don't like. As an example, if I feel like I'm an argumentative person, instead of owning that, I may accuse my partner of being argumentative. If I feel like I've been selfish, instead of owning that, I may accuse them of being selfish. If I feel like they're pressuring me to make a decision, I may accuse them of being impatient, just because I'm pressuring myself to make a decision that I'm not ready to make, or I don't know which way to go just yet. So when you have, you know, this placement, Mars in Libra being square Pluto, again, Pluto being the planet of transformation, there's going to be power struggles. There's going to be hidden rage that suddenly resurface. This is a shadow aspect of Mars, because conflict isn't necessarily something that Libra enjoys. And unfortunately, when Mars is in Libra, we have to go to war with ourselves and confront the parts of ourselves that make us feel powerless, so make us feel resentful. And then we have to confront the parts in others that make us feel the same way. And our refusal to address the parts of ourselves that make us feel that way may cause us to act out of aggression, where we're suppressing our real feelings, but then we're projecting them onto other people as a way to reclaim our right to assert ourselves without guilt. So instead of me owning my anger, I'm going to do passive aggressive things to make you angry. And then when you're angry, I don't have to feel guilty about being angry, because now the anger that I have inside is on you and you're acting it out for me, and I get to not feel any guilt about it because you're the one that's acting out of character. You see that? So Mars in Libra can be very passive aggressive and emotionally manipulative with how they express anger, because they don't like to own their anger. They don't know how to express it in a clean way. They don't know how to handle it in a constructive manner, because they prefer avoiding it. So usually when they face it, it's very unbalanced. This lunar transit is asking you to clearly display your anger and to clearly put it into words to help your relationship with yourself and your relationship with other people. It's not about displacing it into fights. It's not about resentment. It's not about being passive aggressive. Rather, it's about owning your emotions, owning your mental and emotional roller coaster, and finding a way to express it so you can have something tangible, concrete come out of it that makes your life feel more peaceful. That's what it's about. Having Mercury in Libra at the same time as Mars is in Libra is really bringing this focus back to communication and dialogue, and fairness in communication and dialogue. It being opposing Neptune makes us susceptible to lying to ourselves, because remember, Neptune clouds judgment. So gaslighting is going to be available, lying to ourselves, lying to other people, fantasy thinking, idealizing relationships, all that is available. But we can always choose the deeper insight, the higher ground, if possible, but cutting through the illusions and seeking a breakthrough by asking ourselves the tough questions. Why did we do what we did? What were we feeling before we did it? How did he make us feel to do it? Now that we're removed from it, do we see that that was not the right thing to do? Why wasn't that the right thing to do? What could we have done instead? These are the conversations we should be having with ourselves at this time. This solar eclipse new moon transit has come to end these specific things in the way that we do life. Number one, self-criticism loop. Virgo likes to think and overthink. Oftentimes, this need for overthinking is rooted in perfectionism, which is not sustainable, and it creates a lot of health issues for them. We're being asked to let go of these old coping mechanisms that are rooted in the need to control. The overanalysis is about control, and it's about blame, and it leads to burnout. We're being asked to think of a more constructive way to deal with things, which is using discernment. There's no need to overthink when you already know. Simply make a decision and live with the consequences of your decision. The end. Number two, grief. Saturn, the relationship between Saturn and Neptune right now across Pisces energy is forcing us to admit what isn't working. We won't be able to get away with continuing to lie to ourselves after this moon transit. And there is grief with that, the grief of letting go of the illusion of perfection. The reason why Virgo is so hard on themselves when they make mistakes is because they function under this premise that they shouldn't be making mistakes, which is again why I believe the Virgo and Pisces axis is a narcissism axis. Because why do you think you shouldn't make mistakes? What makes you think that you're perfect? Why do you think you don't have flaws? Only people who don't have flaws think they shouldn't be making mistakes. People who know they're flawed know they make mistakes. The fantasy that Virgo creates around the need to grieve mistakes is unnecessary, and it's hard for them to see it because they're not looking at it from a logical point of view, but rather from an emotional one. Because Pisces, their sister, is all water, Virgo gets to hide their watery nature behind this need for structure. And that's where the overanalysis comes in. So grieve to the extent that you need to grieve. But I encourage you to rewire how you think about making mistakes because, my dear, we all make them. That's the whole point. We come here, we do a lot of stupid things, we learn from them, and we evolve. That's literally the human experience, and there's nobody who's exempt from that storyline. Moving on to the next point, number 3, attachments. Venus's interaction with Uranus right now is shifting our definition of love. The patterns that we've had with ourselves in the past about love are not holding up anymore. Those old expectations are not holding up anymore. Those old attractions, they're not holding up anymore. We're now entering a space where love has to be more raw, more honest, more truthful in the way that it shows up. It's time to integrate our fantasy about love and the reality of the love that we're giving ourselves and other people. Number 4. The interaction between Mars and Pluto is about suppressing our aggression. Emotional honesty is required for us to have a healthy love relationship with ourselves and other people. Emotional honesty requires that we let go of the perception that other people have and speak in truth and feel our feelings without shame. Anger is a natural human emotion. There is nothing wrong with being angry when things are happening that make you feel angry. The problem with Libra Mercury and Libra Mars is that they believe they can skip anger, the process of feeling the anger, and they can get to the solution without putting any blood, sweat, and tears in the game. And that honesty of the blood, sweat, and tears is required. So Pluto is asking you to get real. Scorpio wants you to get to the root of what's really making you angry, and why is it that you can't own it, and why is it that you need to involve other people in your emotional drama, and why is it that you need to project your anger onto other people in order to feel it? Why is it that you need to borrow other people's bodies in order to give yourself a chance to feel your anger? Why can't you just feel it for yourself by yourself? That is the conversation that Pluto wants you to have under this new moon. Lastly, this new moon's interaction between Uranus and Pluto trine is bringing emotional breakthrough to the forefront. To be able to reach it, we need to engage in shadow work. Okay? Shadow work brings liberation from patterns. We have to take some time alone to reflect on the ways that we have been, yielding our anger in an unhealthy way, the way that we've been suppressing our emotional expression, the way that we've been giving away our power in relationship, the way that we've been dishonest about our own limitations in terms of our ability to make mistakes and to take responsibility for our mistakes, and the ways that we've been basically overemphasizing thought over feelings in how we do life. None of that is going to continue working for us after this new moon transit. Now on to the horoscope for all 12 rising signs. Starting off with Aries. Aries, for you, this falls in the 6th house, which is the house of Virgo. If you've been working this energy in the negative, you've been a workaholic. You've been burning out. You've been obsessing over routines. You've been micromanaging your health and everybody else. You've been a busybody, just busy all the time to avoid feeling your deeper emotional issues. It's time for you to increase your self-awareness by redefining your routine with a little bit more compassion. It's time for you to learn discernment between being disciplined and using work as a way to punish yourself. Healthy work habits are supposed to feel freeing. Work can feel like devotion and service when it's purified, when we're not doing it out of obligation, but we're doing it in a really thoughtful manner. Okay? So set some intentions around how to create a routine that feels natural and healthy for you. And this takes me to my next point, because Virgo also rules work. If you're not happy with your job, it may be time for you to find a new place of employment, because your work has a huge impact on your emotional well-being. Moving on to Taurus rising, for you this falls in the 5th house. It's time to let go of perfectionism when it comes to your creativity, to your marriage, or to your parenting. Seeking validation through a flawless performance, or seeking validation by not owning up to your mistakes so you can be seen as the good one in the relationship, is not how you get to a sustainable, loving, stable relationship. You get there by being vulnerable. You get there by being open. Self-awareness is about embracing joy, embracing creative expression, embracing imperfection, embracing humor, because we all do stupid things, okay? And when you learn to laugh about the stupid things that you do with the person that you're doing the stupid thing, against, you can deepen your bond. It's about reintroducing play in your relationship, being childlike in your relationship. It's not about controlling and manipulating the other person, but rather approaching the companionship from a place of love, of pleasure, of messiness. It's not about management. It's about just being. Relationships deepen the more vulnerable we become, because then we are less focused on performing and more focused on just being. Gemini rising, for you this falls in the 4th house. You might be renovating your home. You might be moving into a new home. You might be establishing a new relationship with your mother. For you, this is all about family dynamics. You may have grown up in an environment where you were heavily criticized for your opinions, your ideas. A maternal figure who was very domineering or rigid in the way that she interacted with you, or perhaps she made you feel like you were only good for your good ideas, and you were only there to fix things. So then you got yourself caught up in this cycle or this family pattern of judgment, anxiety, and fixing. Well, emotional liberation is here. It's time for you to get some clarity around your family history. It's time for you to own the role that you play into your own suffering with your family. This transit for you is about healing ancestral perfectionism, ancestral control, controlling patterns that were passed down to you from your mother's line. It's about creating a home that feels safe to your nervous system. Your body knows when you're too wired. Your body knows when you're overwhelmed. It's time for you to reclaim your right to feeling at peace in your own home, in your own body, and to reject this idea that chaos and agitation is normal. It's not. It's a byproduct of trauma, and you can reclaim that story for yourself. Moving on to Cancer rising, for you, this falls in the 3rd house. If you've been working this Virgo energy in a negative, you probably feel like you're overthinking. You're probably dealing with a lot of anxiety. Your mental is probably on overdrive right now. Cancer rising, unhealed, has a need to be right in communication. These are people who struggle to admit when they've done something wrong. They love to manipulate others emotionally to externalize their emotional discomfort. They do that often by lecturing instead of listening. They do that often by getting into the weeds of the conversation and trying to find something that's out of sorts so they can get the audience or the person they're communicating with redirected to something else, so they don't have to focus on the part of the conversation that makes them feel like they're losing control. Cancer rising can lose the big picture in getting very hyper focused in the minutia, and it's because whenever they feel that they've done something wrong, they go into their cocoon like a crab. They go to hide because they don't want to show their emotional vulnerability, and which then leads to mental overdrive. What you're here to work on under this moon transit is clarity of thought and communication. And that starts with admitting that sometimes you're going to say the wrong thing. Sometimes you're going to mean the wrong thing. And writing, teaching, and speaking with integrity is important. And that's actually more important than being perfect. When you do the wrong thing, pretending you didn't do it is not how you get respect. You get respect by owning up to what you did and being honest about what you did. The peace that you're looking for comes when you have clear boundaries around what you said and what you put out there in the atmosphere. The mental clarity that you're seeking comes from reconciling your shadows and your light, your imperfection, and how the things that you say can create emotional discord or chaos in the environment. And once you recognize that, then you have to actively work to curtail that. That is the maturity that Saturn is asking of you, okay? Moving on to Leo rising, for you, this falls in the 2nd house. Self-worth issues are back on the surface for you. It's time for you to separate your self-worth from your work. Your productivity does not define you, okay? Your money does not define you. Your resources does not define you. You only define yourself by these things when you're living in fear. Equating your personal value to efficiency, to productivity, to usefulness, to cleanliness, to making money is a fear-based way of living. You're worthy because you are. Your value is in you because you exist. You're worthy even when you're imperfect. You're worthy even when you're not working. You're worthy when you're napping. Financial resources for you get amplified once you embrace simplicity. There's beauty in simplicity. And simplicity comes when you become more focused on quality over quantity. This placement is about the 2nd house ruler of Taurus, is about choosing value. And value is about your authentic DNA. Things that I consider valuable are because of who I am, where I've been, and my history. The values that I have support my unique well-being, okay? They don't control me because they have nothing to do with other people. And they have nothing to do with me comparing myself to other people. It's not about control. It's not about comparison. It's about ownership. I say this is valuable. I say this is not valuable. So it's time for you to really think about what you base your self-esteem on and how you can make that more honest in terms of like more unique to you and less about what society thinks of it. Okay? Moving on to Virgo rising. For you, this falls in the first house. As you know, Virgo, is time to let go of your hypercriticism, of the issues that you have with your body, of anxiety that you have about how other people see you, what other people think about you, obsessive, desire to self-improve, obsessive desire to develop yourself. Self-improvement can become a prison for Virgo because Virgo then finds themselves always chasing after the more elevated version of themselves, never truly satisfied with anything. Their whole identity is shaped by the fear of not being good enough, which is why they're obsessed with continuing to work on themselves. It's time for you to hit that reset button very, very hard when it comes to your identity. Own your sensitivity. First of all, you're the sister of Pisces. You can never be as hard as you pretend to be. Own your discernment, meaning that you have great intuition that tells you when something is safe and it's not. And when you get that feeling that it's not, you need to act on it. That's what discernment is. It means I already know, so I'm going to move like I know. Okay? You're very intelligent. That's the other thing that you have. You're not ruled by Neptune, so there's no delusion in your intelligence. It's clean. It's clear. So stop making apologies for being intelligent. A lot of people are going to gaslight you if you're not confident in your intelligence. You need to trust that you know what you know, and you need to allow yourself to be, instead of endlessly trying to fix yourself to make other people more comfortable with you. Becoming an example of self-acceptance is really what you're here to work on, and that comes from you embracing your imperfections, because if there's anybody who is perfect, it's you. Because you're the only one who tries this hard. Honestly, nobody else is trying as hard. Nobody, I promise you. I see them all. Nobody's trying as hard, but you're the one that gives yourself the least credit. You're the one who acts like you don't have feelings, and you're the one who dismisses your feelings. And then you wonder why other people treat you so poorly, because you treat yourself poorly. Once you start fixing your self-image and start being more loving towards yourself, then you can be more honest about how you treat yourself and other people. Moving on to Libra rising. For you, this falls in the 12th house. This transit is asking you to examine your relationship with self-sabotage. It's time for you to take responsibility for the way that you avoid yourself, the way that you play victim in the problems that you created, or the way that you overgive to other people unconsciously, only to turn around and act as if they robbed you of something, even though you gave it away. This criticism that you have that gets turned inward secretly makes it hard for you to enjoy life. It makes you feel very isolated. And in addition, it creates a lot of anxiety for you because you never learn how to trust yourself. This moon transit is asking you to cleanse your palate, to cleanse your unconscious mind, to dig deep into your spirituality, to develop a deeper relationship with God, whatever that looks like for you. It's about renewal of your spirit, and that means letting go of guilt, letting go of this need to punish yourself, developing some compassion for yourself and other people, balancing out your boundaries with self-respect, okay? There's a huge space of abundance here that Libra naturally has that you're missing out of because you're not tapping into your intuition. You're not respecting your vessel, your spirit, because your spirit knows when something is right and when something is wrong. And when something is right and when something is wrong, and it's your responsibility once you have that awareness to reset the scales. And when you act like you don't have a scale, and you act like there's no accountability, there's no karma, and you act like you don't have to be responsible for your karma, then you can't turn around and play victim when you get the karma that you were asking for by the self-sabotage and the avoidance behavior and the victimhood mindset that you created. It doesn't make sense. It's time for you to take responsibility and make space for healing, because your life could be much more abundant if you approached it from a place of empowerment as opposed to approaching it from a place of victim and self-sabotage. Moving on to Scorpio rising. Scorpio rising, it's time for you to let go of toxic group dynamics, okay? Being in group dynamics that are into criticism or control is gonna make you feel depleted, okay? Because you're gonna find yourself being the one that is on the up and up as a way to earn belonging. You're gonna find yourself basically begging for social standing, for social acceptance by going along with toxic games that you don't really want to be a part of. If you're currently in relationships with people who are very negative and who are very critical and whose sole purpose of conversation is around like putting other people down, then those are not the environments that you want to be in. It's time for you to really analyze the role that you play in your social circles and whether these relationships are nourishing your soul, whether they're bringing you healing or whether they're bringing you destruction. You're going to have some sort of breakthrough right now in your social identity, and you might decide that some friend groups no longer honor your authentic self. And it might be time for you to sever those relationships and move into another direction. It's not about perfection. So if you ever find yourself in social circles being the perfect one, then that means the environment is piss poor. Because you should never be the perfect one. You're ruled by Pluto, the planet of death. Okay? There's nothing about you that's perfect. So if you're the perfect one in the group, then the people around you are more wicked than you are. Okay? And that's never a good thing. You want to find groups that honor your authenticity. It's not about perfection, but it's about truth. Scorpio needs that perfect caliber of truth. Again, not about perfection, truth. Friendships are spaces of healing. Friendships should make you feel better about yourself by bringing attention to things that you need to work on and also supporting you in working on them. Whenever your friendships become a space of judgment, you're no longer in friendship, you're in a war zone. So you have to clarify your vision for what you want in friendships in the future and basically set intentions and goals around that. Ideally, you should want friendships that are rooted in truth, in honesty, in maturity, in growth, in a growth mindset. Not in people pleasing and not in doing things to fit in. Moving on to Sagittarius rising. Sagittarius, it's time for you to let go of the perfectionism issues that you have with your job, the fear of failure, which is keeping you at a job that makes you unhappy. It's time for you to let go of trying to control your image at work. These rigid standards that you have at work, they're causing you to feel miserable at work and burned out. You're chasing recognition that may or may never come, and that's not what work is about. You're there to do your best work, okay? And you do that by removing any attachment that you have to judgment at work. That liberation of your career identity requires you to let go of perfectionism. It's about being authentic. You know what you're doing. You love what you're doing. Do it. Some people are going to like you. Some people are not going to like you. It doesn't matter. It's about doing work that heals. For Virgo, work is really a way to detoxify their body, because part of Virgo's offering to the world is their work. And that's why Virgo rules over work in astrology. When Virgo's working, they're a perfectionist with work. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do a great job, but there's something wrong with dying behind your job because you're doing it for the accolade, which never comes. Do you see the difference? When you're giving more than you should because you're waiting to get a kudo, when you don't get that kudo, then work then becomes toxic. And the work that you're here to give is about serving. It's about bringing gifts to others, bringing generosity of spirit to others, bringing clarity to others. So you cannot define it in terms of status or in terms of awards or in terms of kudos. You have to define it in terms of the good that you give. It's not about what you receive, but rather what you give. And if your heart is really in it, when you're giving it, you feel good from giving it. You're not waiting for anything else to return. I'm not saying you don't need a paycheck. I'm saying you should do it because it feeds your soul. And if it doesn't feed your soul anymore, then you should let it go. That means that work is no longer work for you. Okay? Moving on to Capricorn rising. For you, this falls in the 9th house. It's about healing your dogmatic thinking. You have some belief systems that are irrational, that create a lot of anxiety for you, that do not match your education, your philosophy, or your spirituality. You're dealing with a lot of contradictions that do not make sense. And while you're struggling to bring what you believe and how you act in harmony, you tend to have a lot of critical worldviews and a lot of criticism of other people. It's time for you to understand that nuance is a thing, okay? Wisdom is about nuance. It's about integrating discernment and open-mindedness. There is more than one right way to do something. There's more than one right way to get to God. The way that you get to God is not the only way to get to God. I promise you there's 8 billion people on this planet, and all of them can get to God because God is who brought them here. So God has given each one of them a roadmap to get back home. Okay? And whenever it's time for them to get home, whatever vehicle God has given them to get home is what they're going to use. So the freedom that you're here to find is in humility. Okay? You have to find some humility. If this is something you're struggling with, you really need to work on it because truth is layered. Truth is not absolute. You don't know all the truths. You're 1 out of 8 billion. God knows all the truth, and God is those 8 billion people plus all of nature, plus the entire universe. The entire universe has so many truths that our minds can't even comprehend. It's time for you to rebuild your belief system around ideas that nourish your soul as opposed to ideas that control. When people are insecure in their spirituality, they use their belief system as a way to punish and criticize others. When people are secure in their spirituality, they use their belief system as a way to motivate themselves to continue to strive to be better people. You have to choose which kind of person you want to be, and the fruits of your labor shows to everybody what kind of person you are, okay? Moving on to Aquarius rising. For you, this falls in the 8th house. The 8th house is about control. It's about power games. It's about Scorpio energy. It's about perfectionism that's projected onto sexuality, onto finances in relationship, onto dependence in relationship, onto vulnerability, onto passive aggressive controlling games. When this energy is not being worked in a positive, these are the type of people that want to stay around people they don't like because it's like keep your enemies closer, type of energy, which is inherently very toxic. So this transit for you is bringing you emotional purification. It's about trust. And when the trust is real, you don't want to control because the intimacy feels right. It's about time for you to face your fear of being betrayed, your fear of being perceived as imperfect in relationship. The breakthrough that you're seeking comes from you letting go of fear and embracing vulnerability. The more you embrace vulnerability around ideas of shared resources, power dynamics, sexuality, intimacy, passion, depth of sensitivity, merging souls. The more you release, the more control leaves the conversation, and the more you can relax into love and intimacy. Love and intimacy are not about control. Manipulation and control will never bring you satisfaction. Now, moving on to our very last placement, which is Pisces. Pisces rising, for you, this falls in the 7th house. It's time for you to bring balance in all your relationships, primarily your business and marital relationship. If in the past perfectionism was the focus that you projected onto your partner because you were afraid of not being good enough, so you wanted them to feel not good enough, and as a result you were constantly criticizing them or you were eliciting a lot of critical energy from them, then you're going to feel unfulfilled because critical, distant people don't make good partners, okay? And there is no such thing as a perfect partner. That's a lie that is created because none of us are perfect, so our relationships cannot be perfect. Resetting your relationship dynamics is about accepting your partner as a human being. They're not a savior, and they're not like a helpless person that needs to be rescued either. They're also not a scapegoat, somebody that you get to put all of your issues onto because you hate yourself. It's time for you to take responsibility for your own emotional chaos and heal that, and allow them to also have their own emotional chaos. It's about cultivating fairness in the relationship, and fairness requires that you give each other space to be imperfect. There's beauty in imperfection.
When you cultivate fairness in the relationship, you have clarity in your partnership. And that clarity really comes from understanding that you're going to make mistakes and they're going to make mistakes. And you're so lucky that you get to make mistakes in each other's proximity. And you get to learn together and grow together and journey together. It's about allowing real intimacy to replace the projections, to replace the insecurities, to replace the need to win arguments, the need to dominate. You know, the apologies that sound like I'm sorry if I hurt you. I'm sorry if you're offended. I'm sorry if is not an apology. When you hurt somebody, you take responsibility and you express genuine sorrow for what you've done. And then you proceed to do things to fix it. If you've been scapegoated in your relationship, this is time for you to heal that. And if you've been projecting your issues onto your partner, this is also time to heal that. This eclipse is where Virgo's urge to fix and control comes to die. It's collapsing under the Saturn and Neptune pressures. And what comes out of this is discernment. Discernment without judgment. Service without being a martyr. Or service without basically begging for a trophy. Or intimacy without projection. It's possible to resolve our issues in relationships without making somebody the scapegoat, without being hypercritical. It's possible to offer service without any strings attached. Virgo, at its most unhealthy state, is anxious, controlling, and critical. Virgo, in its healthy state, is discerning, healing, clarifying, and deeply compassionate. It's up to us whether we want to choose the path of compassion in how we treat ourselves and others, or whether we want to choose the path of control and alienation and pushing people away in how we choose to do relationship. Whatever we choose is our choice, and whatever consequences we get from our choice is our choice. I hope that under this new moon, you will make the choice to love from a pure place, a place of pure intentions. I hope that you will bank on yourself. I hope that you have the courage to choose a love that feels whole, that feels full. And I hope that you have the courage to choose a love that need not be perfect for it to be celebrated. Love between two imperfect people can never be perfect. And that really starts with accepting that we have our own imperfections and creating a structured way of us to get in touch with ourselves, our sensitivity, our mental health, our emotional well-being, to eat healthy food, to get enough sleep, to meditate, to journal, to physically exercise, being intentional every day and making choices that allow us to be our best is how we show ourselves love. It doesn't come from just saying, I love myself. That love has to be demonstrated through actions, and those actions are designed to make us look our very best and feel our very best. And it's not about what other people think of us, but rather how we feel about ourselves. So we cannot afford to neglect ourselves, because when we do that, we also neglect other people in our relationship, because we're no longer putting value on self-care, on appearance. And the appearance that we have of ourselves is the most important. Okay? Looking forward to connecting with you for our next moon transit, which is going to be the full moon in Aries on October 7th. And hopefully, after this monthly transit of lunar eclipse and solar eclipse, we've gathered more information about who we are, what we're about, how we show up in the world, and we can make choices that feel more empowering, more honest, more honorable, more sincere, and more helpful. Remember, we're only here on Earth for a short period of time in the grand scheme of things, and all of us are here to make a positive contribution. It's very hard to do that when we're not making a positive contribution in our own lives. So everything starts with the self, and from there expands to the world. I wish you love, light, and healing. Happy solar eclipse, Virgo New Moon. I'll catch you on the next ride. Thank you for listening to the Aquarius podcast. You can book your astrology reading at intuitivehealing.com. You can also watch videos at Intuitive Healing here on YouTube for Astrology 101 content. Listen to the Aquarius podcast on Spotify, as well as here on YouTube for your horoscope. If you're interested in astrology and love connections, you can visit at Styled Under Libra. And of course, for health and wellness and holistic healing, visit at Styled Under Virgo for all of your astrology content. Thanks so much for watching.